seven-figure doula whisperer, and we are coming to you again with another hot topic. We have our guest on, who is Miss Kim Davis, and Kim is, we've been knowing each other for so long, and I always reach out to Kim when someone reach out to me and need guidance in sleeping, because I remember one time we had a conversation and Kim said, well, sleep is so important, and that's the reason why they use it as a means of torture. And I'll never forget that. So we want to make sure that we have all information that we need for parents, whether you're a new parent or a parent of multiple, births, or it don't matter, even as us as parents, we need at times need some guidance on, getting that good sleep. And I remember a few years ago, while I was working as a postpartum doula, I had the privilege of helping a mom who was so sleep deprived. I remember walking in, and that mom had somewhat, you could just see the stress on her. You could literally feel the tension. And she said to me, Rosalie, I don't even know how I'm coping. I don't know what to do. And it just gave me great pleasure knowing that I had someone, around like Kim, who I could recommend to her so she could talk to that specialist and work out the kinks as to what is going on, because it's not a one size fit all. It could be a marriage of different things that's going on. It could be health reasons. It could just be some things that mom may not know how to do, how to get, it could be something like the room may be too cold or the baby needs to be swaddled. So having someone who is certified and specialized in pediatric sleep is so important, like what you do. So Kim, thank you so much for being here. And I'm just can't wait to hear all the things, the tips and stuff that you will be sharing with moms at this moment. So thank you so much, Kim, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have our chat.
I know. So Kim, can you tell me a little bit about, how you get started? I know your youngest child had sleep challenges, which was a big turning point for you. But how did you get in this? Can you share more about that experience? What were those days like? How did you cope?
My son now is he's 13 and a half, and I remember so clearly why I started to look into sleep, because our family was sleep deprived for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And I stayed 2.5 years. He did not nap well. He did not sleep through the night for 2.5 years. So you can imagine the sleep deprivation that was going on in the family. It wasn't just him sleeping.
Yes. Nobody was sleeping.
It was a pretty dark time, and if I'm honest with myself, it was a time where I felt everything was crumbling around me, and I didn't know whether I was coming or going, and everything in my life just started to fall apart, and it's because nobody was sleeping. We cannot regulate our emotions. We cannot function without sleep, and just like you said at the beginning, this is why sleep deprivation is used as torture, because it truly is torture on your brain, on your physical body. It is absolute torture for everyone involved. And I think a lot of families, too, have this misconception that, yes, you do have a baby, and it's almost like the rite of passage, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I thought it was as well. But once I started learning about sleep, I was like, no, I need to help families. I need to get this misconception just, thrown away, because it's not true. There's so many things that you can do to help your family sleep. So I'm so excited to share some things with you guys today.
I know. Thank you so much for that. So was there a specific moment when you realized that, what, I need help? Not just for your family, but for others as well. Like, this cannot be we can't live like this.
Absolutely. I remember we were moving around a little bit because my husband was traveling with his job, and we were relocating, and I kept blaming it on the relocation, and I kept saying, oh, it's just a phase, it'll just pass. And I came to a point one evening where I was just beside myself. I was so exhausted, and I remember getting really angry wrong with me. This is not the mom that I thought I was going to be. This is not the mom that I want to be. And that was my turning
point. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to find help. I need to just, figure it out for my family because we cannot survive doing this any longer.
And so it was a pretty scary point.
And so it was a pretty scary, I remember it so clearly. I know exactly where I was. I know the exact time of day it was because it was just etched in my brain that I need to do something about this. It's becoming dangerous, right? It really, really is. So that was my turning point that night. I remember it clearly.
I remember having a client who's the husband. He fell asleep at the traffic light because he was so sleep deprived because they were just both so exhausted. And even though he was not the person who was getting up and breastfeeding,
Yeah.
he was not the person who was getting up and changing diapers, but he was in the space and he was actually feeling it because he would see the exhaustion in his wife. So even though she gets up and does it, he was not sleeping well. So it was affecting him
Right.
to the point where he said somebody actually honked at him at the traffic light. And that's dangerous.
It's very dangerous, right? It is very, very dangerous. Sleep deprivation, they compare it to being intoxicated driving, right? It is so dangerous when you don't get enough sleep and your body does not function the way it's supposed to. When you're living off a couple of hours of sleep, you're almost living off fumes, right? Like your adrenaline and everything. And eventually your body will crash and it can't survive. It really, really can't survive. And then you're right, it is dangerous. It is very, very dangerous.
So after those challenge, right? What made you decide to pursue the training and to be certified as a pediatric sleep consultant?
The very reason that
I literally dove into everything that I could find about sleep. And I was looking into, things online, and it was very confusing. And it was just, there was so much information out there about sleep. And so confused and overwhelmed. And I'm the type of person, when I become overwhelmed, I just shut down. And I don't do anything. And that was the wrong choice, because I was just like, I don't know, if one person says, if I do this, I'm going to ruin my child. If another person says you have to do this so you don't ruin your child. And so I was like, there has to be other families out there that are struggling just like I am. And I made a promise to myself, not go through what I went through. That is what I want to do, because it was awful. It truly was awful for everyone involved. And so I started searching around, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and help as many people as I can and get through this. And so I kind of stumbled upon the Family Sleep Institute, where I'm certified. And it really went from there. I fell in love with their teaching. I fell in love with their way of teaching as well, which was really important to me. Just everything that they taught was important. It wasn't, as you said too, it's not a one size fit all. And I think that's why I really gravitated to the Family Sleep Institute, because they teach everything. They teach the science behind sleep. They teach different approaches, because everybody has a different parenting style. Every child is different. So you can't put all these like little people into a box. That's impossible. You're not going to see the results you want to see. So that was one reason I chose the Family Sleep Institute, because it was just fabulous. Because you have to be careful, and for your listeners, that if you do decide to go with a sleep consultant, really check into their certifications, because a lot of them are self-certified. Right? They read a couple of books and they become experts, apparently. So do your research, right? It's just like you were researching a doctor or a lawyer, or even search, you look at reviews. Super important to do that, because you do want to have somebody who really understands what's going on. And I think what I bring to the families that I work with is that I've been in their shoes. I know exactly what they're going through. I know all of the emotions that they're feeling. So the empathy that I have for them, I think, really helps me connect with the families that I work with, because I know it's awful. I know exactly those feelings, like kind of get through it and help them navigate through all those feelings. That's a big part of it, right? It's not just, okay, let's decide on an approach. We need to take everything else into consideration, right? The approach is a very small piece of the sleep training puzzle. And I think a lot of people are very shocked when I say that, because there's so much else that goes on and one small
True.
piece
That's
of that.
true.
So
So we all know, the importance of sleep for child development. We know that babies that's the only time their
Mhm.
brain grow. So how
That's right.
important is
That's
sleep
right.
for child for child overall growth development from you as an
It
expert?
it's the number one thing, right? It helps build their immune system. It helps create brain connections. That's the only time that we do make brain connections is during REM sleep, which is, a rapid sleep. And it's, if they're not getting that deep restorative sleep, their body is going to start to show that they're not developing as they should be, right? You're going to see developmental delays. You're going to see a lot of learning disabilities. And it's interesting, when we look, I also teach in schools as well. I do an elementary school program. And I can tell when I walk into and who's not by the way they're engaging. If just by looking at them, sometimes a lot of the times too, we'll find that some of these kids that have been diagnosed with, like, say, ADHD, when you take a deeper look, you realize these children are not sleeping. They're not sleeping. And this is a big part. And getting them that sleep that they need, we definitely will see behavioral changes, behavioral changes for the good, right? And teachers, I get feedback from teachers as well saying that, those students that received the information and took it home, and they are now starting to see the implications of, just certain things that we talk about within the program and implementing them, and everything in the classroom starts to change as well. So it's interesting to see how sleep can, navigate the different paths in the school system as well. So hopefully the schools will, start to embrace sleep just like they do physical activities, right? Sleep is a
Right.
big part
That's
of
true.
everything.
So can you share any surprising facts or insight when you talk to a teacher or a parent about the long-term effects on poor sleeping on children?
Yes, we definitely see their memory. It greatly impacts their memory. They're not able to remember the things that they've been taught, because they're not processing that at nighttime. They're not getting into that deep restorative sleep. We also see sickness increase in the schools as well, because if you're not sleeping, your immune system is not strong. So we definitely see an increase we do see some cardiovascular issues as well when people are sleep deprived, and that goes for adults too, right?
Exactly.
So we have to be mindful that we're also talking about mom and dad and the impact that they're having. But definitely for schools, you will see self-regulation. One of the biggest things that you see when children are not sleeping, is they're not able to self-regulate, and that's a big thing for schools right now. The emotions, the outbursts, just not being able to sit still. A lot of those things are based in not sleeping. So it is one of the number one things that we should be teaching in the schools is the importance of sleep, right?
Wow. So what are some of the misconceptions that you find that parents have about sleep?
One of the biggest things I
One
think I
of
come
the
across
biggest
on
things I think
almost
I
a
come
daily
across
basis
almost a
when
daily
I talk to
basis,
families
when I
is
talk to
their
families,
misconception
is their
about the amount
misconception about
of
the
sleep that
amount
their child
of
needs.
sleep that their
Sometimes
child needs.
parents will
A
come
lot
to
of the
me and say,
time, parents
I
will
just
come to
think
me
that
and
my
say,
child
I just think
they're
that
on
my
the low
child
end
is, they're on
of
the
needing
low
sleep,
end
so they don't need as many
of
hours
needing
as the
sleep. So there's
recommended.
as the recommended.
And usually,
And usually,
talking
once we
more
start talking about it, they realize that, oops, that is a big misconception. My son or daughter definitely needs
than their
more sleep than they're getting. And the biggest thing is the biggest thing, I think, challenge that I come across with families too is when we implement an early bedtime.
Yes.
That's key.
Yes.
That's absolute key,
Mhm.
because that big misconception that if you keep them up
not
long
gonna
enough,
happen.
they're just going to crash and they'll sleep all night.
No.
That is the
That poor
biggest
child,
misconception.
or baby gets so overstimulated that they cannot get their little body
Yes.
down to that stage where they can go to sleep.
Exactly. That's the biggest misconception, is to like keep them up, all day, or
Mhm.
keep them up late.
No,
That will backfire
It will. It will.
100%.
You need to work so many nights, and dad would be there watching the football game, and the baby's right there with them, TV blasting, and like,
Yeah.
honestly, you're gonna have such a good night because I kept baby John up all evening, so he's gonna be tired. And I just look at him and shake my head.
No,
I'm like,
no.
if only you know.
No, right?
If only you know. My God, no. Yeah. But what you do, Kim, is so important, just to educate families on the importance of sleep because it's something that we all need. So, what are some tips or strategies or techniques that you often recommend to parents who are struggling with their children's sleep when they feel like, okay, I've tried everything?
Yeah,
What are some of the
exactly.
things like,
And that's the thing too, like so many parents, just like myself, like I was trying everything.
Mhm.
But the biggest thing that when I look back and what, I didn't do was consistency. That was the missing piece, right? Like I would try something for a few days and I'd be like, "Ah, it's working." Right?
Yes.
And then I'd go to something else and then I'd try it and be like, it's not working. But we have to remember that these little people are not robots. We can't
Nope.
just turn off sleep associations that they've been used to for like 10, 12,
15 months, right?
No.
Expect
15,
them
to just be like, "Hey, mom and dad, I don't need you to help me fall asleep anymore. I'll be fine. Just put me down." That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So we have to be mindful that when we are working with families, that we take that into consideration, but also taking into the fact that every baby is different and every family has a different parenting style.
Mhm.
So we have to be able to think outside the box, and we have to be able to adapt approaches to fit the family's goals and to fit their needs, and to also
Yes.
incorporate their parenting style, because that's super important. Because if you, let's say you're working with a family who practices attachment style parenting, and you certainly would not offer, say, extinction or cry it
Okay.
out, right? That would not
No,
be stuck
no,
with
no. Right.
into consideration, because
Mhm.
you want the consistency. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
Every approach will work as long as the parents are consistent in
Right.
that
I
approach.
always
Yeah,
say that, yeah, I
absolutely.
always say that, like most parents will ask, how soon can we get the baby to sleep? Or, how soon will the baby be sleeping? Or can you get the baby on a schedule from, night one? And I always say, what we do is we have a routine and
Mhm.
we make sure that we give them the information so they're being, like you said, be consistent,
Yes.
right? So you cannot like go all over the place because then that baby is not gonna have. They don't know. First, they don't even know what to do. So you're there to guide them. I always say that at times we have to train the parents first.
Oh, for sure, right? That's exactly what it is. We have to educate them on
Yes.
what their baby needs,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes, parents will start blaming themselves too, and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing everything
No.
wrong." But they're really in those, those first few months are pretty much survival mode, right? That's what
Exactly.
every parent
Yeah.
is in,
Yeah.
especially new
They
parents,
babies
and
adjusting to being outside the womb and being in
right,
that cocoon and hearing mom, heartbeat and
right,
all that.
right.
They
And
have
so
to
they
navigate this world.
and that's the
to
thing
that,
too that I think
parents are so worried that they're doing something wrong, but we have to share with them that you're going to be navigating through all these different paths as as a new parent, or even as a seasoned parent sometimes, because babies
Yes.
are different, right?
Yeah.
My children were
Right.
completely different in regards to
Hmm.
sleep, but helping them navigate through things is really important, and providing them that education for parents is really important, so they build their confidence and they know that, okay, consistency is one thing that I need to work on, or is something that I need to share with my little one, because then they'll know what to expect. If mom or dad does
Right.
this,
Be
this is what
consistent.
happens, right? And that can start as early as coming home from,
Right.
giving birth. That's when we want to start implementing that routine, and not necessarily like a
No.
schedule, right? For
Mhm.
newborns, like
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. Sleep
Right.
is so sporadic at that
Mhm.
time that it really is listening to the baby, watching the
Having the
baby,
cues.
understanding that okay,
Mhm.
we can, start implementing some things
Mhm.
that will even need
Exactly.
to sleep
Right.
train,
We always
right?
tell parents,
That's
like, we
the
set
goal.
you up from night one, so you don't have to sleep train. So we give you the
Yeah,
tools. And what we always instill is be consistent. Try
right.
your best to have bedtime routine the same time as much as possible. We know it's not written
Yes,
in stone because you have to follow the baby cue. Some nights it's going to be a
right.
little different. But when you start from that early routine, then like you said,
Yes,
baby picks it up. The baby know that okay,
absolutely.
as soon as the light is dim, the sun machine is on, I take my bath,
Yes.
it's gonna be bedtime.
Yes, exactly. And it's those visual cues that also help. It's not necessarily what parents are saying. It's all of the visual cues that are going on that are going to help this baby realize when the lights go down, okay, now it's cueing my body that it's time to sleep. Everything
Right.
gets quiet. A sound machine comes on.
Mhm.
Oh, sleep being done. Those sorts of things are super important for baby. Super
Exactly.
important.
Exactly. And we also know that it doesn't matter how much we try, the routine, there's one big thing that always happen or most time happen, and that's sleep progression.
Yep.
Like, whoa, boy, we have the perfect, everything's all planned out, everything, baby is doing good. Now,
No.
maybe up to 3 months, maybe going 6, 7 hours per night, waking up one time or two times to feed. And then the good old sleep regression, which can be a nightmare for parents and
Yes.
even for us too who are going in and help. So, how do you advise parents to handle
Yes.
these challenging periods? And what are early signs
Right.
that sleep regression is coming? Like, what do you always tell parents to look for to know that, okay, it's not just that baby want to be held or baby want to feed. It's definitely something that baby's going through.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting too because there's a
And
lot,
it's
right? Because
interesting too,
certainly in the first
in
few
the
years of
first 2
their
years of
lives,
their
and
lives. And
I'm a
I'm
graduate
a
from the
graduate
Wonder Week
from the
course,
Wonder Weeks
and that's one
Academy.
thing
And
that
that's one
I
thing
love
that,
sharing with
I
parents
love sharing
because
with
there's
parents
so
because
many
there's
things
so
going on in
many
that
things going on in
brain.
that baby's
You
brain
have no
you have no
control over.
control over. But
Mhm.
what we can do is educate you as to why it's happening. And I'm a why person. You need, if you explain the why behind the behavior, I got you, right? But if you're not explaining the why, I have a really hard time following. And so
Right.
that's what I share with my day. So this is what's happening to the baby's brain. This is why, you're starting to see naps shorten. Big milestones, like for instance, when they're starting to roll or they sit up or crawl or, stand or walk. Big 5 major, major milestones that little ones are going to go through. And they will 100% affect sleep. And the reason why they affect sleep is because the baby needs to stay in REM sleep. And that's the lightest stage of sleep to make. This is why we see wonderful new motor skills is that sleep gets wacko all of a sudden and parents are like, I didn't do anything, and I'm like, you're right,
Right.
you didn't. It's just your baby
Wow.
changing. All right, but how do we navigate through those changes? And so I provide a lot of information of like how you can do that, certain certain activities, certain toys that they can do with their children during the day that helps them master those skills quickly so sleep will come back on track. And parents are always like, what can I do? What can I do? And this provides that for them. And it takes that anxiety away of them thinking that I'm doing something wrong. And I love sharing to parents, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just your baby's changing. And to really embrace those changes, right? Because they are exciting. And I know a lot of parents are like, like that dread 4 month sleep regression. I really try and change that narrative where it's not seen as a bad thing. This is a really good thing. This is a really exciting thing that your child is
Yeah.
going through. So let's embrace it. Yes, it may be challenging, but just think your baby is going to be able to do ABC after they kind of get through these next few weeks, and it is going to be life changing, right? So trying to change it more so as a progression instead of a regression is something that I'm very mindful of in my practice. So we we navigate through it in those challenging times, understand why. And I think that really helps parents when we're going through those challenging times, because like you said, baby's sleeping like 6, 7 hours and big long stretches, and all of a sudden, no, I'm not doing that
Every
anymore.
hour,
Every
every
hour.
hour,
Right?
right.
So it's
So
hard.
I
It's really
know, I
hard.
know. So for people who are not familiar with what you do, right? What exactly does a pediatric sleep consultant do? Could you just walk us,
Yes.
as a
And
family, like, you walk into like a family reach out to you. What can they expect when you work when they work with you?
yes,
Yeah,
and
and
one of
one
the
of the
big
big
misconceptions too with a sleep consultant or even like a sleep specialist is that the only thing that we do is cry it out. And I
No,
want to just smash that right now. It's
no,
not what I
no,
do.
no,
That's
no,
not
no,
what I do.
no.
You can do that on your own, right?
Right.
But that is not what I do. What we do together as a team, and really as a team approach that I take with families, is that we sit down and we really what the
Mhm.
sleep issues are, what their goals are, because every
Right.
family's goals are different. And we go through a very detailed sleep intake form, and we figure out what is the best approach for each family and how they see themselves. Implementing this approach is a good thing, because so sometimes when we're working with families, an approach, and they realize, wait a second, I'm not able to do this at 3 o'clock in the morning as opposed to noon, right? Our patience level is very, very different from noon to 3 a.m. So really focusing in on what's going on within the family dynamics is also important as well to that puzzle. So once we go through the sleep intake form, we discuss it together, and we go back and we develop a plan together as well. And that's where we get the feedback from families saying, yes, I'm going to be able to, carry on and go through these changes, because there are changes. We talk about the emotion behind all of these changes, because a lot of the times it's not just baby that's having emotions, it's also mom or dad, right? And a lot of people are surprised that absolutely dad's involved in all of this.
So of
And
course.
so we see a lot of emotions, big emotions, obviously, from the little ones, because it's change. Nobody likes
Mhm.
change. So we see big, big emotions, but we also need to be mindful that, it's very emotional for mom or dad. Right. And that's what we go through. So there's usually a 2 week period that I'm with families. And there's daily communication, either through a sleep log or email, phone call. I don't have any limits to those. And so we're in contact, tweaking the plan along the way. If we daily discussions about the sleep log, the progress that we're seeing, and then we wrap it up in 2 weeks, usually about to discuss all kind of their concerns or questions they may have. Maybe there's travel or sickness or something going on in the future that they're not aware of. And so we provide the tools for them so they'll be able to go and carry on with themselves. So yeah, it's a pretty emotional 2 weeks. You get pretty connected with the families that you work with. So
Right.
wonderful families.
I like the fact that you say give them the tools because life goes on. I always say that,
Yes.
it's hard to like the newest member of the family, the smallest member, the youngest member of the family disrupt the whole family. So
Right.
it's so important when having someone like you that they can reach out to you to. So is there a common reaction that you get from a family after the first consultation? Like what are the like after the first consultation and you point all the things out and what you're going to do, what's the common reaction that you get, or is there a common reaction that you get?
I think the common reaction is fear. They're really
Mm,
afraid to change, because they're afraid of the big emotions that they're going to see. They're afraid that they're going to be up like even more so as opposed to, what they are. So I think fear is the biggest and most, the unknown, right? The fear
right.
of the unknown. But if it's not working, we need to
Mhm.
change something. And I remind them that you reached out, something's not working, right? It's not working anymore. So let's see if we can help your family get the sleep that you need and you deserve. And we take it from there.
So it's more of the unknown.
Yes, definitely the fear of the unknown, right? And I get it. I totally get it, right? They're
Mm,
trusting this pretty much stranger, right, to help their family with something very personal.
I know.
And it is a very personal matter. A lot of families are very hesitant to share that they're struggling with sleep, because sleep is a
Right.
big topic. Those mom and baby groups, what is the first thing that moms do? Oh, how's your baby
Exactly.
sleeping, right?
Exactly.
And
That's the first thing.
some
Yes.
some moms are like, they don't want to talk about their struggle, and I know I didn't want to talk about my struggle. I didn't want anybody to know that we were struggling in that. So yeah, it's a very personal matter, and I've been very blessed over with so many wonderful families that have entrusted me to help them. So very, very blessed in
That's
that
awesome.
sense.
We've been doing this for a long time, has helped many families. I have the pleasure of, being in her community, in her presence, and see some of the things that she has done. And not only for babies, you also work with elementary school kids in Canada, because it carries on over. When the sleep is being disrupted as a baby, a toddler, it goes over into that age. And I've seen where it affects kids, and you're able to go into the school and help them to get readjusted and bring them back on track where their bodies are back, because they're able to rest, they're able to work with their parents, giving them the tools to get these kids back on track, because we cannot talk enough about how important sleep is. So,
Yes.
Kim, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your work as a sleep consultant? We know we talk about the fear of parents when you first started with them of the unknown, but is there any other challenge that you want to point out that you face while working as a sleep consultant with families?
I think the biggest thing is not being recognized as a true specialist. A lot of families will think of sleep consulting as kind of like hokey pokey, and it's not a real thing. But
Yes.
it is. Get a bad rap because people, like I said earlier, just think that all we do is cry it out, right? And that's definitely not what we do. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, where a lot of professionals may want to refer out, but because we don't have, like an MD behind our name or anything, that's kind of where the
Mhm.
referrals stop in a sense, right? But you think about it, when in doctor, number one thing they ask, how's the baby sleeping, how's the little one sleeping? And research is actually showing that doctors and interns, they only receive, and this will shock your listeners because it definitely shocked me, they only receive up to 5 hours of sleep education. I know, right? It is crazy. And that is one of the biggest thing. How they eating and how are they sleeping? Those are the questions that doctors ask, and parents ask, like, my
But
child's not
doctor
sleeping,
don't
what
have
do I
anything
do?
else to
And
tell
a
them.
lot of doctors are like, I don't know. Right? I don't know. I learned that, like, I don't know how many years ago, and I only got 4 hours or 4 or 5 hours of training. So that's where the challenge is that there's I'm not sure if it's like a lack of trust or credentials, or I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. But doctors are very hesitant to make that referral because maybe it's liability, right? But I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as sleep consultants is getting that referral from doctors. That's what I think that'd be the one.
Maybe we just have to find a way to just educate parents more about the benefits of sleep, and not only
Yes,
how it affects the child, but how it affects the whole family, because like we
right.
said, if there's other children in the household, it's also gonna affect them also.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Affects
It
the
affects the
entire
entire
family,
The
not
family.
just the
entire family. Exactly. Yeah.
baby, and or even the
Right. I know I
everybody
spoke earlier about the dad who actually
involved.
fell asleep at the
I
fell asleep
know.
at the stop sign. And I also, I have
Yeah.
so many stories. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I also have another dad. He actually fell asleep during on a call. Actually, he was before
Oh,
COVID where he doing call. He was actually on the board in the boardroom, fell asleep,
no.
so tired.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right.
And
And
one thing
one
too,
thing
like,
too,
and that brings
that
up
brings up
a
a good thing as well.
good thing. Now, corporations are realizing that families do need help. And so they're actually incorporating like benefits, through their health and wellness program to actually reach out to sleep consultants, which is amazing, which is absolutely amazing because their stars are not sleeping, their performance at work decreases, right? It is not what
Exactly.
it was
Yes.
before the baby came along.
Mhm.
So I think they're slowly starting to realize that it's a good investment to invest in their employees and actually, look at sleep
Time family
for the
members.
entire family. 'Cause that was a
Yes.
perfect example, what you said, fell
Exactly.
asleep in a board
Exactly. How
meeting, right?
productive can
So
you be? Yeah.
right,
Like
right.
I mentioned before,
Yes.
a lot of time, that baby who's having the sleep issue is not the only child. So how do you, recommend incorporating older sibling into the bedtime routine? So are there any strategies that you share
Yes.
to make sure there's harmony when there's a new baby in the mix? Because toddlers, sometimes the older child is already feeling resentment, and now, parents have to spend more time with the baby now to get the baby to sleep, or baby waking up multiple times a night because, waking up the older
Right.
child. So any strategy you have
I
that you share
know.
with your families on how to incorporate that?
Yes.
Absolutely. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
families,
There's a
that
lot of
reach back out
families,
when
that
they're
reach back out when another
arrived
sibling
because
arrives because the toddler sleep now goes off
Mhm.
track. And it's hard for the little ones to really grasp the new family dynamics. And they're like, well, where do I fit in now? Now that mom and dad are giving this little one all of the attention, where am I? So just sleep issues with the older child, behaviors that mom and dad have never seen before. They're like, who is this child? And it's because they don't understand the new family dynamics and they're trying to figure out where they fit in. So we'll sometimes see, not behavior that we want to see because they're just trying to get their mom or their dad's attention. They don't do it,
Right.
on purpose. Like they're not, being bad because they want to be bad. It's if it's positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement that they're receiving from their parents, they're just engaging with their parents. And this is what they want. They don't care if their parents are mad at them. They're just like, well, mom and dad talk to me now. Mom and dad are hugging me. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter what I've done. So we out having that special moment for to carve out a time in the day where it's just them. And it's a special time for them so they don't feel kind of left out. And a lot of the times they do, right? They can't articulate that, particularly if they're like 2 or 3 years old. Like, hey, mom and dad, I'm feeling a little left out. Would you mind if we just had some special time, right? They don't know how to do that. So carving out that time for them is super important. So they still feel that they're part of the family and also helping them embrace their new, brother or sister that comes along, incorporating them in, if they can sometimes allowing them to be mommy or daddy's little helper. That is a big thing with little ones. They always want to please, they always want to help. And so giving them tasks around bedtime and helping with their little brother or sister can really go a long way. And because they feel part of the team, they're helping out, they're getting their little one to sleep, whatever it is, they still feel included. So it's super important to try as best as you can to are the little helpers. I think those are the two biggest strategies that I share with parents to help them navigate through the new dynamics that they're going through because it's tough, right? It's really tough. And sometimes we even see like like definitely a sleep regression with in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, if I wake up, I'm going to get the same attention. Right. So they start to stall at bedtime. So they're overtired at bedtime, which causes night wakings, causes early morning rising. But they're like, well, if my little brother or sister is doing it, so am
Can do
I.
it. I'm
Right.
getting the attention, so I can do it. I can do it too. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Right.
So
That's
I
it.
think
Yeah.
the new
That's two
part that I
strategies
love
that I
sharing
love
with
sharing with
families,
families.
the special
The
time
special
and also
time
creating
and
the
also
bedtime routine
helping with
goes
the
a long
bedtime routine
way,
goes a
a
long
long
way,
way when
a
there's a
long
new
way
little
when there's
one.
a new little one
Mhm.
for the family.
So we often focus on the child's sleep, but how does a parent's sleep or habit affects the child's sleep? Because what we
I'm a
habit.
perfect example of that. So when I don't sleep, I become a bear. I am not a very
Mm,
pleasant person to be around if I don't have enough sleep. And when we were going through that 2.5 years with my son, it really affected my relationship with everyone. My husband, my daughter. My daughter is 2.5 years older than my son. And she never had these sleep issues. So I was like really literally thrown under the bus when this little guy came along because what I was doing with my daughter wasn't working for my son. And so that goes to show too that even siblings can be completely different in the way that they respond to sleep and the associations that they need. So it's really important to focus on mom and dad's sleep as well, because you will not be that parent that you want to be. You become short-tempered, uh, run down so many health issues, depending on what sleep associations that you're using at that time. It can be really hard physically and mentally on mom and dad if they're not getting enough sleep. And I'm a perfect example of that.
That is so true. So I know
Yeah.
sometimes depends on the age. Toddlers now we have to be managing night walking. And for younger kids, waking up to sleep, and that can be so challenging for new parents. So what strategy do you provide to parents to manage night wakings, night walking for the older one, and that's more effectively
Mhm.
while ensuring that the child, get the sleep that they need?
Yes, and one thing that we really focus on as a team when we're working together is the cause. What's the cause? Because if
Hmm.
you're not treating the cause and you're just treating the symptoms, you will not see any results. You will be
Mm.
spinning your wheels the entire months and months. So we always look back at the cause. What's the cause of the night waking? What's the cause of like the sleep terror or whatever's happening there? And 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you that it is a very late bedtime. That is the number one cause. And being
Yes.
overtired. If there's no underlying health issue, the number one reason we see bedtime battles, night wakings, early morning risings, sleep terrors, like night terrors, nightmares because they're overtired going to bed. And I know that seems really simple, right? When you're like, oh, come on, like that's it, that's the reason. Absolutely, because your body does different things when they're overtired. We can't regulate, we can't calm down. Many parents probably heard the phrase of a second wind. That's what happens to, little ones when they're overtired. They get a second wind and it's physical now. They can't shut it off, and you have to ride with them for like sometimes hours, right? When they get that second wind. So this pushes bedtime even later. And so they're not getting that restorative sleep that they need overnight. And then this big cycle continues, right? They're overtired during the day. They're not napping well because they're overtired at night. So it's this big vicious circle for families. And so the biggest thing for for a family that I work with is adjusting bedtime. That is the number one thing that is right where we want it to be. That's the biggest.
Goes back to starting that routine from day one as early as
Absolutely.
possible. Because the more
Absolutely.
you do it
Yeah.
as a parent, is the more you have a better handle of stuff, and it's the more the child is more aware of what's coming next.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Having that
That's
routine
right.
and having that
Having that
earlier
routine and
bedtime.
having
And
that earlier bedtime. And
what,
it's funny when, families will come back to me and say, well, I just can't do an early bedtime. I just can't do it. My family is, saying that about it, and they get a coworkers and they're like, you're ridiculous. Why are you putting your child to bed so early? Because they need to. They need to go
They
to bed
need that
early.
sleep.
Little ones are wired to go to bed earlier and to wake earlier.
Right.
It's not until, later on, like, school age kids where we start to see them waking later, like 7:30 in the morning. So if you think about it, like a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night, if your little one's waking up at 6:30 in the morning, 12 hours later is 6:30. That's
Bedtime.
bedtime, right? So sometimes you have to implement an early bedtime to break that
Mhm.
overtired cycle. It's not forever, like a super early bedtime, but sometimes you need to bring it very, very early. So you break that cycle, and you really want to break that cycle so you don't, have continuous night waking, rising. And so like I said, it can be a vicious cycle when you get caught in that. And we definitely don't want you to be caught in that at all. So if, your listeners are, one thing that you take away from the talk that we had tonight would probably be, let's implement an early bedtime to see if we can get
Exactly.
a hold of all of these things that are going on, right? That's,
Yes.
it sounds like a simple fix, but when you think about it, because, families are working now and drop pickup, all these sorts of things are happening. There's dinner to prepare, there's, a bath or whatever. It's easy to say, and to put it down on paper, yes, early bedtime, but we also have to be mindful that it definitely is not an overnight fix, because you have to get all those other pieces together in order to have that early bedtime, right? So it is a process for a lot of families, and a lot of families struggle with getting an early enough bedtime. And that's the biggest struggle for them, is to implementing that early bedtime. But it works.
But
Trust
like
me, it
short
works.
term,
It
short
works.
term sacrifice for long term goal.
Right?
That's
If they
exactly
can
it,
commit
right? That's
for a good
exactly it.
2
If they can
weeks,
commit for a good 2 weeks and having an early bedtime, you definitely see some progress. Definitely see
So you
some
have less
progress. Yeah.
crying, less pushback, less tantrum. Yeah. And the
And it's
parents will
a
be able to be more rested.
That's right. And the great thing too is with an earlier bedtime, when we are talking about breaking away from sleep association, saying rocking to sleep, feeding to sleep, whatever it is to sleep, we want to be mindful that we're providing an opportunity for these little ones to learn these new skills when they're not overtired. Because just like you and I, if we're overtired and someone asks us to do something, no,
It's gonna happen.
let's
Yeah.
not, let's do it another day. I need your help. Same thing for the little ones who are breaking away from sleep associations. You don't want to implement change when they're already beside themselves and overtired. It's not going to work. You're just going to be so frustrated. They're frustrated. Everybody's upset.
Time for work.
Not the
Yeah.
time to do that. So by bringing bedtime much earlier when you're first starting, allows their body to be in a place this change, right? Yes, they will protest, absolutely, but not in the same way when they're,
Yeah.
3 hours past
Yeah.
their bedtime,
It's
right?
human, it's
So
human
that's what
nature.
we want to be
We're gonna
mindful of.
push back, even as a baby. We're gonna try to see
Yeah,
what we can get away with.
that's right.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. And
Exactly.
particularly toddlers, right? Their job, and they do it perfectly, is to test boundaries
Yes.
and expectations. They do it perfectly. And so we have to remind parents that you will see these big emotions, and that's normal. We validate their emotions. Yes, change is hard, but you know what? Things need to change because mom and dad and everybody else is not sleeping, and we really need to sleep. So little ones can grasp the importance of sleep, sharing with them what happens to their bodies when they don't sleep and when mommy and daddy don't sleep. And that's one thing that we really focus on in the elementary school program that I teach is, it affects everybody,
It's
not just
true.
them. But little ones are surprised at like what happens to their bodies when they don't sleep. Little light bulbs go off in their heads, and I can see it. I can see the
Sure.
light bulbs go off in their heads, which is fabulous. That, hey, I can take ownership of my sleep even at a young age, right? School age. They're sponges, right? They want to learn. They want to, be proud of themselves. And so by teaching them something that they can do themselves is what we want. We want them to embrace, and to love bedtime, right? We don't want to have
No,
bedtime
no,
battles. That's
no,
not
that's
that's
not what
not
we
what we're
want.
at.
Nope.
We don't want the end of the day yelling and screaming at each other, right?
No,
That's
it's
not fun.
not. It's not.
It's not
Okay,
fun.
I know you've worked with a diverse family across different culture. Have you noticed any culture difference in sleep practices?
Yes, different cultures, it's interesting because a lot of, let's say, it's a different culture, and one of their kind of things that they practice, say, not necessarily in Canada or the US, um perhaps bed sharing is a big thing. That's a big thing that I come across with different cultures, and it's not necessarily the family that I'm working with that has the issue because they don't want to do it. It's the other family members that, they believe that you should still be doing that, and they don't necessarily have the same viewpoints as, maybe the younger generation in regards to like safe sleep and that. So I think that is one of the biggest things with the different cultures is, bed sharing and co-sleeping. That's the biggest thing that I come across is that with the different
Okay.
cultures.
Kim, this has been such an insightful and enriching conversation. I, I, I love talking to you when it comes to sleep. So I thank you so much for sharing your journey and your expertise with us today. It's clear that sleep is crucial, not only for children, but for the entire family. and your work is making such a significant impact in the community. So for our
Thank you.
listeners who are eager to learn more about what you do, and for some who may need your guidance, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The best way is to connect with me through my website. So babesandbeyond.com is the website, and the homepage will actually connect you into a consultation that I do for free, and we talk about their goals and see if I can help. And that's the best way to get a hold of
Okay.
me
And
is through
even though
there.
you're in Canada, you have clients also in the US, so you work
Oh,
virtual, so you
all
work
over.
over.
Yeah, I've worked
Because
with many families all over the world.
yeah,
So because we can communicate through
emails and
Zoom
stuff,
and
yeah.
telephone and email. Distance is never an issue. It never is an
Because
issue. So yeah,
everyone
I
needs
enjoy
sleep.
working with different people all over the world.
Yeah, I say everyone needs sleep. So thank you so much for what you do. We really appreciate what
You're
you do.
welcome. You're welcome.
I might need you for
Thank
myself soon. So I might have to reach out to you for myself.
you. Call me. Thank you, my dear.
All right. So until next time, Kim, thank you so much. For all my listeners, thanks for joining us again for another exciting episode on Chat Bout with Rosalie, the seven-figure doula whisperer, wherever conversation is geared to transform your life one conversation at a time. So until next time, take care, be blessed, and we will be back next week.